Compliment and Plant-Based News present Plantapalooza. Join me in welcoming our latest headliner to the stage, interviewed by Compliment co-founder Matt Tolman.
Rip Esselstyn, thank you so much for joining us today. You and I have spoken for almost an hour, and I'm glad we've clicked record. Hopefully we have the stamina to continue with the high energy, and because we're just getting to the good part, right? The part where you can impart some of this wisdom as a New York Times best-selling author and the founder of PLANTSTRONG and Engine 2, and you can speak a little bit more to that distinction, but we'll also talk about where the Engine 2 name comes from. But let me just finish the introduction by saying, you know, your parents and your dad in particular have been such an incredible gift to the plant-based movement, and it's so awesome to see you carrying on that legacy. For me, you know, they were one of, like, I call them like the forefathers, or maybe more appropriate, the four people who have brought forth so many of these ideas that got us all started. And like I said, one of the earliest books I read. So a big thanks for you being here, and a big thanks to the Esselstyn family for being such leaders in the community.
Matt, my absolute pleasure. And the reason why you and I have such incredible stamina is because we are Plant Strong. We are Plant Strong. We live and breathe this lifestyle and all that it entails.
That is true. That is true. And today we're talking about the 7 pillars of eating for longevity, with the subtitle that is perfectly fitting. You know, longevity is disease prevention, but it's also energy and plant strong living, right? Because who wants to live to 100 if you're doing it in a feeble old folks home, right? It's all about, you know, flourishing. Like your dad, who you just shared, is just on the cusp of turning 90. It's so amazing. So I'm excited for the conversation.
Yeah, no, but you're exactly right. It is much more than lifespan. It's also health span. And how many of those years that you're alive are you actually thriving and doing things that make you feel like you are living life? So for example, you know, I just got home back to Austin from Cleveland, Ohio, where I was hosting our 12th annual Plant Stock event. And I was staying with my parents. And 3 of the 4 days that I was there, I played pickleball with my mom, right? 88. She's running all over the court, forehands, backhands, you know, dinking, slamming it. And I just did a post today saying, when I grow up, I want to be like Anne.
Yeah, so do I. You know,
yeah.
It's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing. I had a grandmother, my great grandmother, who lived to 104.
Woo.
And there's a picture of her with this like cheap pink boa that one of her like great grandchildren put around her neck at her 104th birthday. And she was so lucid and cognizant and you know, and still fairly mobile. I mean, of course, at that age, you're shuffling around a little bit, unless you're, you know, one of those like just, you know, supernatural people from the Blue Zones videos that are chopping wood at 120, right? Like,
right.
but let's, you know, and as far as Americans in the middle of the country go, like, she was doing about as good as anyone could imagine. And it was so amazing because it's always the thing that some of my family members like kind of throw back at me and say, look, like, you know, great grandmother Gigi, as it were, you know, she always ate meat and potatoes, right? She was a farm girl, you know, like, what's wrong with that? And that may be a great segue, as I'm going to try to poetically tie this back to our conversation today, because it helps me to emphasize that, you know, a lot has changed over the past 100 years. When she was born, you know, what the, you know, farm that she grew up on, right? And that diet and, you know, probably a teetotaler and all those different concepts. And it's a really complicated set of factors as we think about longevity, but there is a certain pattern that we can now look to that consistently plays out in population level studies and clinical research, right? That we can kind of point into like, hey, there's a set of behaviors here that like, yeah, you got these, you know, these weirdos who, you know, kind of defy the odds. But like when you really look at the folks who are consistently living to that old age, really old age relative to, you know, the standard American, and they're doing it with all their faculties and all of this physicality that is lost typically, you know, that's maybe a good place to jump off. And I'm not doing it so poetically, but I want to tie this back to where a lot of people associate you, which is the Engine 2 diet and some of the interventions that you put in place working with Texas firefighters. Maybe we could start there and just kind of
Yeah,
tell the story of how it all started.
absolutely. But before I do feel like I need to like boomerang around and
Sure.
just make a comment on a comment that you had, and that's your great grandmother Gigi living to 104. And that is fabulous. And, you know, like hooray for her. But she's the anomaly, right? I
Yep,
mean, you know,
exactly.
you always hear about she ate scrambled eggs every morning. She had a shot of whiskey at night. She smoked cigarettes and she, you know, whatever. But if you look at kind of, you know, the standard American, 50% of us are getting Alzheimer's and dementia over the age of 80. 1 in 3 of us has high blood pressure. About 1 out of 3 of us has elevated cholesterol levels. I think it's over 50% of American adults are on at least one medication, and most are on a cocktail of medications. Once we get over the age of 40, 75% of us are overweight or obese. You know, not even 80% of us are getting the recommended daily amount of exercise. Not 90% of us aren't getting the daily recommended amount of fruits and vegetables, which is just like, you know, what is it? 2 cups. Same thing. Yeah, same thing with vegetable intake, fruit intake. And what is it? I think the latest stats that I saw is that 50% of the standard American diet is comprised of flour, oil, and sugar. Flour, oil, and sugar. I mean, so Matt,
50%.
like it's just it's really, really sad. So
Yeah.
but you take all that, and I'm going to poetically bring it to Engine 2, and imagine the firefighters have the highest incidence of in the line of duty heart attacks than any other profession on the planet. And it's because their diet is the standard American diet on steroids. It's like times 2 with all the fried stuff, all the ice cream, you know, all the stuff that's baked in Crisco, you know, boiled in Crisco and oils. It really is. It's a testosterone fest for the most part. 98% of your firefighters are male. And so, you know, it's this male machismo that pervades just the whole ethos of the fire station, and especially mealtime. And it's got to have a lot of meat, and you can never have enough meat. And so most firefighters are overweight. Most firefighters are pre-diabetic, on the verge of becoming type 2 diabetic. And most firefighters, unfortunately, are a liability to their crew. And, you know, most people, when they call 911, they expect a superhero to come, you know, flying in and rescue them in their time of need. And firefighters, because I feel like I've been kind of pounding them a little bit here, they have the biggest hearts you'll ever meet, of anyone you'll ever meet. However, these hearts are compromised because of the way that they are eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner 24/7. So we had this incident at Fire Station 2 on the C shift in 2003, where my buddy, JR, he had a cholesterol test and it came back, it was 344 at the age of 33. And he had a a grandfather and a great grandfather. Unlike Gigi, his great grandfather died at the age of 49 from a heart attack. His grandfather died at 49 from a heart attack. And his father had triple bypass at the age of 50. So, and he was a self-proclaimed third generation redneck, Matt. So, which means that he had to have meat on his plate. Otherwise it wasn't a meal. And preferably that meat was deep fried. So after that awakening, I basically pulled him aside and the other guys, and I said, there's a better way. Like, eat the way I've been eating for the last, you've seen me doing this for the last several years. Let's just do it. Like, let's let's make this happen. Yeah. In an act of love and solidarity, we got behind it, or they got behind it. And in 1 month, his cholesterol dropped 148 points to 196. He dropped 14 pounds, felt like $1 million, didn't have any acid reflux, slept well, no more gastrointestinal distress. And, the rest is history. And, we got written up in the New York Times and the local paper, and we were on NPR. And then I got solicited to write a book about the escapades that we were having at Fire Station 2. And that is how the Engine 2 diet came to life.
Yeah. Wow. What an amazing story. And I hope everyone will go check out that story in more detail.
Yeah.
And just to polish off your bio and let people know where they can find more about you, you're also the founder of PLANTSTRONG, which has amazing whole food, plant-based food items. What do you call it? Foods that
I would say, yeah. But I would say even more than that, Matt. What I've been able to develop with the help of a lot of incredible people is an ecosystem around this lifestyle. So it's not just, obviously, yes, we have a food line, but we also have coaching, we have retreats, we have, live events, we have virtual events. We've got a meal planner, just everything around trying to make this lifestyle that much more accessible and convenient and doable for people in a culture and a society, Matt, and this as well as anybody, that doesn't support this way of living. And every turn they're going to tell you, why are you doing something like that? And where you get your protein? And that's the silliest thing I've ever heard. And you're going to be deficient in this, and this. And it's because they got a big placard on their forehead that says ignoramus.
Yeah. Well, that's a perfect segue into the 7 pillars of longevity. But I do want to just comment on 2 really important things, which is, and maybe you can build it into as we just keep talking, but I want to keep it front and center because you hit the nail on the head. I think we're all inspired by Dan Buettner's work with the Blue Zones. And he's obviously a contributor to this summit. And one of the something that really hit home for me in searching for all of the different habits or tactics or whatever you call it, foods that one might eat that he kind of ties to the success of the Blue Zones. And it wasn't any of those things. It was setting up your environment for success, which, as you just said, we do the opposite of in this country, And so I just really want to double down because I think that is one of the things that I hope people take away from this. It's like Chef AJ always says, if it's in your house, it's in your mouth, right? It's like, don't go to the grocery store hungry because you're probably going to end up buying something you regret later. And if it's in your house, you're going to eat it, right? So like have a plan, right? And so set up your environment for success. And it really takes the willpower out of the equation. So with that, feel free to comment on it, but maybe you can introduce high level. What are the 7 pillars that you think most about?
Yeah. Well, first, let me just say, I couldn't agree more with what you just said. And, we have a saying, it's have your environment look like your goals. Right. And, as Dan always says, right, make the healthy choice the easy choice. So, you get that watermelon home, don't have it just sitting there, like slice it up and then put it in either on the counter or put it in Tupperware containers in the fridge. and then you put it out and you'll be amazed how it's gone before you know it. Like I can tell you, having 3 young kids, we've always got fruit everywhere, but you got to make it easy to eat. You can't have it a honeydew or a cantaloupe or a watermelon, or a mango just sitting there. It's helpful if it's sliced and ready to go. So there's a little bit of, make that healthy choice the absolutely easy choice. And to your point, and AJ, if it's in your house, it's in your mouth. So yeah, don't make this about willpower, and just like have the contraband, like don't have it in the house. Otherwise you will be drawn to it like a moth to flame. No doubt about it. So that's that. Yeah. So the 7 pillars, let me give you a little background on this, Matt. So in 2010, I got solicited by John Mackey, the CEO of Whole Food Market Stores, to retire from firefighting and to come work with Whole Food Market Stores, and to basically be this ambassador spreading this message of health and happiness and eating Plant Strong to his 100,000 team member base and to his, millions and millions of customers. And so he made it very, very difficult for me to say no. And he said, Rip, if you really want to take helping people and saving lives to a whole nother level, retire from firefighting and come use Whole Food Markets as a bully pulpit to spread this message. And so I thought about it for about 3 days and went back to his office and said, I'm in. Let's do this. And so one of the things that he asked me to do was to take his sickest team members, people that had a BMI over a certain level, or had elevated blood pressure over a certain level, or cholesterol or LDL, or had already had a shot across the bow with cancer or heart disease, and to start throwing these 7-day medical immersion programs where we would teach them from soup to nuts everything about this lifestyle. And so we started that in 2010, and we did 2 a year. We typically had 100 to 120 Whole Food team members that would come through. And, I had my whole team was there. My father, my mother, my sister, Doug Lyle, Dr. Clapper. I mean, we had the A team there for 7 days, and we ate the meals, the breakfast, lunch, and dinners were just endless buffets of fruits, vegetables, whole grains and beans, casseroles, whole grain, veggie burgers, you name it. And so John asked me if before and after I could do biometric screening. So when they came in, we'd weigh them, we'd do their blood pressure, we'd do a complete lipid profile, all that stuff, and then do it on the way out. And what we discovered is that in 7 days, the body has the incredible capacity to actually, at a biochemical level, to just like turn it around, like quicker than I ever imagined. Like my first book, my challenge was give yourself 28 days to do this, and you won't believe what happens in 28 days. And my jaw hit the ground after we had about 220 data points after our first year of doing this. And literally the average weight loss, is somewhere between 3 to 8 pounds. The average drop in cholesterol is 25 to 50 points, LDL 30 points, triglycerides 25 points, average drop in blood pressure is 10/5. So, and this is happening in 7 days, and I couldn't believe it. My father couldn't believe it. Nobody could believe it, right? And so that is what caused me to write my third book called The Engine 2 7-Day Rescue Diet, and how people can rescue their health from home. They don't have to go to this, a really nice environment like the Red Rock Mountains of Sedona, Arizona, or, Hawaii, or Black Mountain, North Carolina. You can just do it from home.
It doesn't hurt, sound like beautiful places, right? It doesn't hurt.
Oh yeah. And we're still doing that. We're still doing that for people that want it. But for people that want to stay home and do it and, go to work and drop off their kids at soccer practice and swim practice and all that, it's yours for the taking. And so I did another pilot study with about 68 people, and the results were just as fantastic as people that came. And I wrote, so this book came out in 2017 after I had over 1,500 different data points, basically people that went through the program. And so I just knew in my heart that, wow, you know what? And so I know that anybody can do anything for 7 days. And so it's like, here's the challenge. Do this for 7 days. Yeah, you may think it's hardcore, but I'm telling you right now, your health is worth it. And if you're going to be hardcore about anything, like it should be the number one asset that you want to protect. And that's your health and your well-being and your vibrancy, right? We all want to be Gigi, right? So, and so in writing the book, I came up with 7 pillars that I said, follow these 7 pillars. And the extent to which you follow these 7 pillars is the extent to which you can expect to get these same results. And then depending upon after the 7 days, you decide what you want to do after 7. Do you want to string together another 7 and another 7, another 7? And before you know it, you've strung together 365 of these, or you've strung together 10 of them, and wow. And so I'll tell you about some of the testimonials here in a little bit. But so really quickly, I'll go through the pillars top level, and then if you want to dive deeper into any, we can. So pillar number 1 is why we love plants. They're the bomb diggity when it comes to like true nutrition. Pillar number 2 is why we love whole plant-based foods, because just plant-based, unfortunately, isn't going to cut it. And I think we all know that. And most of the plant-based products that are on the grocery stores are calorie rich and super duper hyper processed. They're not made with whole grains. They're loaded with an exorbitant amount of salt, sugar, and fat and oils. And so we want you to eat as close to grown as possible, minimally processed. So that's pillar number 2. Pillar number 3 is why we really don't want to drink our calories. I mean, yes, can you have a smoothie here and a coffee here and, a protein shake here? Sure. But the problem is that most Americans, Matt, between sunup and sundown, they're consuming between 500 and 1,250 liquid calories. And the problem is our brains and our stomachs don't register these calories as calories, and people will invariably consume the same amount of solid food in addition to their liquid calories. And so, I'm like, think about it. You got your coffee, and what do you add to it? Sugar and creamer. All of a sudden, that black coffee that would be 0 calories is now about 120. A lot of people have some sort of a juice in the morning, apple juice, orange juice, the V8. People go to Starbucks or Caribou Coffee and they have their soy frappa mappuccino, right? That's a good 450 calories. It's basically like liquid candy. And then people have their green juices, right? So many people are married to their green juices and their smoothies. And that's a good 300 to 500 calories where you're throwing in, a handful of bananas and a scoop of peanut butter and a couple scoops of muscle protein and blueberries and spinach. And it's just, it all adds up. And then we got the glass of wine at night to unwind. And we've got a glass of, a lot of Americans, a glass of milk during the day and coconut water. And it goes on and on and on. And so my thing is, forget about all that for 7 days and just drink water. And if you got to do coffee, do black coffee. And you'd be amazed how when you remove those liquid calories, how you're removing over the course of that week, a good almost 4,000 to 20,000 calories. Okay. And we all know there's 3,500 calories in a pound. So it adds up in a hurry. Pillar number 4, Matt, is it's calorie density. And this is an 1.5-hour lecture, calorie density. But the long and short of it is you really want to hone in and focus on whole food, plant-based, which is pillar number 2. And when you do, you're getting the most calorie light, nutrient dense food on the planet that's loaded with water and fiber. And water and fiber combine to create this really miraculous, it has this bulking capacity that allows you to fill up before you've taken in too many calories without depriving yourself, starving yourself, counting calories, weighing or measuring food. It's really, it's the way we as human beings were meant to eat. And when you're eating fruits and vegetables and whole grains and beans that are all between 100 to 600 calories per pound, it's a game changer. But when you're eating meat and dairy and refined and processed foods and a lot of nut butters and oils that are all 1,200 to 4,000 calories a pound, that becomes an issue, a problem. And let me tell you why. You and me and everybody else, we are hardwired as human beings to consume right around 5 pounds of food a day. Now it varies if you're working out and how big you are, but let's just call it 3 to 5 pounds of food a day. Well, think about it. The RDA is right around 2,000 calories a day that we should be getting. But if you're consuming foods that are processed, dairy products, animal products, a lot of peanut butter, nut butter, if you're snacking on nuts all day long, if you're putting oil on your, dipping your bread in olive oil, putting oil on your salads, doing shots of coconut oil, like some people suggest, there's no way that you can have 3 to 5 pounds of food in that day and not go over 3,000, 3,500, 4,000 calories. And that's why 75% of us are overweight or obese, and why we're chasing our tail thinking the only way that we can successfully lose weight, which is everyone's 90% of people's New Year's resolution, is by eating less and exercising more. And that's a failed, flawed recipe, or it's a failed formula for sustainable weight loss. So I tell people, go whole food, plant-based. Don't go on another fool's errand. You can consume 5 to 8 pounds of food every single day, and you're still going to lose weight. It is brilliance, and it's there because that's how we were meant to eat as human beings. And again, whole food, plant-based, nutrient rich, calorie light, a lot of water, and tons of fiber. Anything
awesome.
You want to ask me about that, Pillar? Because
no,
I can give
you want to.
Well, I do. Let me add a comment or two about that, because I want to drive this home. So what I want people to understand at this summit, Plantapalooza, love the name, is we want to shift our mindset from how much we eat to what we eat, which will make how much we eat essentially irrelevant. Okay. And feeling full has nothing to do with a food's calorie content and everything to do with a food's volume. So let me give you an example. You could have 2 cups of grapes, and that would give you 100 calories. Or you could have a 1/4 cup of raisins that is 100 calories. Which do you think would fill you up more? 2 cups of grapes or a 1/4 cup of raisins?
And go with the water dense, volume
There you
heavy, whole food.
Very smart. And what's the only difference between the two? Right? The raisins have had their water removed from them. Let me give you another example. You could have a 14-ounce bag of Lay's potato chips. Have you ever been known to throw down a bag of potato chips?
Never once have I eaten one bag of potato chips, but I have definitely eaten multiple bags because
sure,
they go down like water, right?
They do. Well, a 14-ounce bag of Lay's potato chip is about 2,100 calories, and I can tell you it's very easy. It would be very easy to do that. And that's not even a pound. Or you could eat 9 pounds of watermelon. That's 1,300 calories. So, almost half that. 9 pounds of watermelon. That's like 2 huge watermelons. And you'd be getting so many more vitamins, minerals, protein. You'd also be getting 45 milligrams of sodium in 9 pounds of watermelon. and that 14 ounces of Lay's potato chip would yield you 2,500 milligrams of sodium. So just, I mean, those are just a couple examples, and I can go on and on and on, but I'll stop there for now.
Well, it's awesome. And I appreciate the, making it understandable for us. Because it's something we always hear, but it's always fun to hear it again with those kinds of examples and remind ourselves that, at the end of the day, when you think about sitting down to a big bowl of watermelon, like we all know that's going to be more satisfying after the half an hour it's going to take you to eat that
Right.
entire watermelon, as opposed to the 7 minutes it'll take you to eat, whatever it is, 14 ounces, 6 ounces, a small bag of potato chips that yields your entire daily value or requirement of like sodium and then some, right? And just to add, I think I'd love to maybe ask you a couple of specific questions on each one, just to continue to bring these concepts to the fore for our audience. And the first one I'd love to have you expand on is, it's really clear that you shouldn't drink your calories. As you say, and that's a remarkable stat. I think you said somewhere between 4,000 and 20,000 over the course of a week, was it, that, you can save. And I think we're all, susceptible to that in different ways, because it sneaks in, right? Especially in the standard American diet, as you just laid out. And I would just, caution everybody, if it doesn't have a label, right? Like a lot of people don't realize that there are restaurant-based versions of a lot of foods, and there are store-based versions, right? So like in an almond milk, for instance, a brand might sell to Whole Foods, for instance, a certain version of their product, which has a nutritional fact panel that looks a little bit better, right? Maybe lower fat content, because they know people might compare those two side by side. They're going to sell a different version to Starbucks, right? That wants the barista version, right? Like a higher fat content, because it tastes better, and there's no nutritional label on that drink. And I've experienced that myself, where, I was shocked when I saw, if I go and get like the matcha latte, right? It's a great treat if, I'm getting on a plane and can't make my own at home and need that boost, right? And then you look at the nutritional facts of it on their website, it's like 460, calories and like all this added sugar, and I don't even taste the sugar. So it really is like very easy to add those liquid calories. And I just really want to emphasize that. And that's not even talking about, I recently saw, I can't imagine it's true, but it was like a crazy Dunkin' Donuts, like you say, mocha frappa, whatever.
Yeah.
But like, I think it had added sugar in the hundreds of grams of added sugar in their large, and this is like a coffee drink, right? Like this isn't even like a milkshake. So you order it thinking, oh, I'm getting a coffee drink, right? It tastes great, it's sugary, at least I assume that's what you think. You don't think of it as like, the equivalent of eating an entire birthday cake on your own, right? Like on your drive to work. And just like that, 1,400 calories that you don't register at all. So I really, it's a good reminder, because you don't hear about that as much in typical sort of whole food plant-based discussions. But it's a great reminder to like check in with like how many calories, how much empty calories you're drinking on a regular basis. If you want to add to that, great. And if not, I'll ask you a question about it.
Well, about drinking your calories, no. But well,
let me jump in then and ask you then, because I should just add it to my question, which is smoothies. That seems to be a point of contention. We had a mutual friend on recently, and she, like me, it starts our day with a very big smoothie, right? And that thing is packed, like push with your fist down, spinach, right? Some blueberries, ginger, mango, whatever. And for those of us in a rush, it's a great way to get a lot of nutrients in your body. Now, obviously that goes a little bit against, the volumetric goal, So I'm just curious if maybe you can expand on that. Maybe everyone can be right in different ways, right? And or maybe it's different
Yeah.
different tactics for different goals or seasons in your life. So I'm
I think
curious if
that's,
you can.
yeah, no, I think that's a great way of framing it up, Matt. And I would tell you that these pillars and not drinking your calories, keep in mind, I was working with people that are very, very sick.
Yeah.
Right. And so this isn't like somebody that's 35 and, is a mountain biker and all that stuff. These are people that are, they're type 2 diabetic. They've got heart disease. They've got elevated cholesterol levels. They've got metabolic syndrome. They're basically a train wreck. And I would tell you, if you're a train wreck and you're trying to get your health in order, don't do smoothies, right? I mean, again, you're getting I think, and why are you in a rush? Like, let's take your time and take care of your health. I mean, we're all in a rush, right? I mean, but let's not be in a rush, because I want to make my oat groats or my steel cut oatmeal and put my fruit on top. And I'm going to learn to actually put in some spinach in my oatmeal as well to get my greens. And we want to chew them up the way we as human beings were meant to masticate our food. The digestive process starts in the mouth when you chew and you secrete these enzymes. And one of the things we try and teach our people at our programs, Matt, is to consume 4 to 6 servings of a handful of green leafies a day, because those nitrites, I should say nitrates, that are in those green leafies, it is absolutely essential for us to convert those into nitrites downstream. But when you whir them up in a smoothie, right, and now you're not chewing them, you are not receiving almost 80% of the nitrates and how they can be converted into nitrites downstream to allow your endothelial cells to produce nitric oxide that will allow your innermost vessels to be like Teflon instead of like Velcro. So is it the easy way to do a smoothie? Absolutely. Does it taste incredible? Absolutely. Would I want to do a smoothie every morning? Absolutely. But you know what? I'm not. And you also, when you do a smoothie, because you are basically just drinking it with a straw or you're sipping it, there's no work involved whatsoever. And our bodies love taking the easy approach, the lazy approach. You are not burning as many calories when you're drinking that. 14% less calories, in fact, is the figure. So that's my argument. Do I ever have a smoothie? Absolutely. I probably have 2 a month, but it's not a regular routine in my day. And I can tell you this too, if you're having any kind of issue with elevated cholesterol, triglycerides, immediately stop drinking your calories and your smoothies, because that will do a real number on your blood sugar levels and your triglycerides. So there you go, my man.
I think you may have sold me. It's funny. Some of my dear friends, James and Dahlia Marin of Married to Health, they were the first ones to tell me about the saliva and sort of and it makes total sense, right? The more you learn about the human body, the more you figure out that it is truly a beautiful orchestra, right? And like, we as humans have figured out how to cut out some of that symphony in different ways, right? And then you wonder why we're breaking down earlier, right? Which is, everything that I understand about, the 14 hallmarks of aging is like, it's just an accumulation of these trillions of cuts over the course of a life, right? And some are bigger, some are, and I'm not obviously speaking to, some of the genetic issues like childhood leukemia. I'm talking about the accumulation of damage. And so, the more we can do, like you say, to work within what we understand to be the natural processes and not cut out different orchestra members, right? Yeah. Like it's going to sound better. The music's going to play a little more beautifully.
Oh, it's a symphony. It becomes a symphony of beautifulness. Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Let me ask you 2 more, because I know we're short on time and I want to be cognizant. 3 more. The thing that everybody likes to talk about, particularly your work, at least in a period of time, was with big burly men who I'm certain asked you about protein. Let's just all accept the fact that there's really good science to suggest that you don't need as much protein as you need, or as you have been told, and that a lower protein diet, much in the way that a lower calorie diet overall, right? Like, use your body less. It's pretty clear, right? Like, you have a finite resource here. The less your body has to work every day to, like, for instance, digest protein, the longer it'll live. So it's kind of a pro longevity thing. I think most people are getting that message, but tell us why, first of all. Why is that the case? Why is protein, maybe not as correlated to longevity, unless you're maybe over 65 and you're worried about like sarcopenia? And then tell us about the person who says, like me, well, I'm an exception because I'm an ultra endurance athlete, or I'm working on building muscle, or these caveats that people always like to tell themselves in terms of why they are the ones that need more protein.
Well, so you're exactly right. I mean, pillar number 5 is actually why we want to limit the amount of protein. And I'll actually tell you that most Americans are protein toxic, and they're getting their protein from the wrong source. They're getting it from animal-based protein and animal byproducts. So they're getting it from meat and dairy, which is really a janky, unintelligent, inflammatory form of protein. It basically creates a huge IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor response, and now you're basically lighting up any potential tumors and cancers that you have, and we all have them all the time. So I tell people there's no such thing as protein deficiency in this country, but what there is a huge fiber deficiency. What, 95% of us are deficient in fiber. So it's just it's a boogeyman. The whole thing about, protein and where am I getting my protein? It's a boogeyman, and all protein originates from plants. So let's skip, as the game changers so eloquently put it, let's skip the middle cow, the middle pig, and the middle sheep and whatever, and just go straight to the mother source. And now you're getting the Goldilocks form of protein that's not going to siphon calcium from your bones. It's not going to inflame your arteries. It's not going to do a real number on your kidneys and your liver. It's not going to raise cholesterol levels, and it's not going to incite the growth of IGF-1. So, according to some very, very well-renowned, nutrition establishments like the World Health Organization, for example, we only need between 5 to 10% of our calories coming from protein. And that's really with a built-in safety margin as well of about 30%. And, Matt, your average fruit is 7% protein. Your average whole intact grain is 14% protein. Your average green leafy vegetable is 35% protein. Your average legume, bean, peas, and lentils, is 25% protein. So literally, you can't blow it. That's why I say it's a boogeyman. And it's just all this marketing that, you can't get enough protein, and the protein you're getting is not complete. And I'll tell you right now, the protein you're getting from plant-based sources, whether it's your black beans, your watermelon, your steel-cut oats, or your bell peppers, has all 9 of the essential amino acids in the perfect composition and proportion. The isoleucine, the lysine, the methionine, the phenylalanine, the tryptophan, valine, histidine, all 9 in the perfect proportion and combination. So don't sweat the details there. When you talked about athletes, I was a professional triathlete, I should say world-class triathlete, for almost 20 plus years. And I didn't once count how many grams of protein I was consuming during the day, because I knew as long as my weight was stabilized at about 167 to 170 pounds, I was right where I needed to be. And so all I needed to do is, if my weight was going below 167, I just knew I needed to eat more. And by eating more, I would be getting more of everything than I needed, not just protein, but essential fatty acids, right? And the carbohydrates that are my body's primary fuel for my 36 trillion cells. And just to give you an example, your average piece of Ezekiel whole grain bread is 7 grams of protein. So if I had an extra one piece of bread, that's 7 grams of protein. If I had an extra 1/3 a can of black beans on my rice and beans extravaganza for dinner, that's 7 grams of protein. If I had an extra just 2 ounces of whole grain penny pasta with a marinara sauce and different veggies and greens, that was some 7 to 8 grams. So just an extra piece of bread, 2 ounces of pasta, and 1/3 a can of black beans, and I've got 21 added grams like that into my body. So as long as you're consuming enough calories, I don't care, who you are, how active you are, your weight is where you want it to be, you're going to be hitting a home run when it comes to protein.
Yeah. And, I would just encourage folks who nonetheless are focused on it. It's like, just to double emphasize what you said, soy protein like tempeh or tofu and beans is like, about all you need, for the vast majority of people. And that's coming from somebody who, takes supplemental forms of protein and sells it on our website, right? But
Right.
that's because we see an issue with the tremendous amount of low quality pea protein that people are taking, and we want to provide something better. But that's not for everybody. In fact, for most people, if you ask me, and myself included, like I put beans in my smoothies, which again, you should be consuming your smoothies, but it's a double emphasize. And tempeh is like the most dense protein source I have ever found, and it's delicious. It's probiotic, right? So
Fermented.
I'm with you there. So as we're running out of time, let's talk about salt, sugar, and fat.
So salt, sugar, and fat. Most Americans, because, well, let me say that unfortunately, most Americans are not eating enough whole plant-based foods. And because we shop at a grocery store and we're buying stuff in a package, a box, and a can, we're invariably getting stuff that is laden with salt, sugar, and fat. And I'll tell you right now, Matt, and everybody at the summit, these food manufacturers, and I know because I'm one of them, right? Most of them don't care about your shelf life. Not one bit. All they care about is the shelf life of their product, and that when you consume their product, all those little receptors in your brain go off, like you just had a little bit of cocaine or heroin or something like that at a much lower level. And that's why they emphasize all the salt, the sugar, and the fat, because we have receptors for all these different things, and they're going to try and get you hooked on their products. And so pillar number 6 for me is why you want to become a label reading ninja warrior. And you need to learn what brands and what products you want to stay away from, because it's not in your best interest. So we have a thing. And when it comes to sodium, you want to look at the calories per serving. So let's just take a can of soup, for example, Amy's vegetarian soup. And it'll probably say 200 calories per serving. There's 2 calories in a can, or 2 servings in a can. It'll say 200 calories. You want to go immediately down to the milligrams of sodium, and the milligrams of sodium, I bet you, will be like 700 or 800. And we want it to be as close to the number of calories as possible. So, 180, 200, 250, that now we're talking, right? Because otherwise you're going to go way over the RDA, which is right around 2,000 per day. And most Americans are getting 3,000 to 5,000 milligrams of added sodium a day. And Matt, that's why almost a third of us are hypertensive. And that's not good. So we really want to watch that sodium in the packaged, boxed, and canned foods and restaurants. And that's where 80% of American sodium comes from. when we eat out at restaurants, and when you don't know how to read a package, a box, or a can. When it comes to sugar, most products, whether it's your yogurt, whether it's your pasta sauce, whether it's your bread, whether it's your soup, your broth, is loaded with sugar, added sugars, typically refined sugars. And so look at the ingredients, and if there's any sugars, added sugars in the first 3 ingredients, put it back, because by law, they have to list in descending order by weight, each ingredient in that package, box, or can. And so, and then we want to go through and make sure there's no more than 3 different types of sugars. And if there are, leave it. It's just, there's too much. Now, there's a new rule that just came out, Matt, recently, where on the nutritional facts panel, they have to put the number of added grams of sugar in each package, box, or can. And so that's really helpful as well. And to put this into perspective for everybody listening, there's a teaspoon in 4 grams of sugar. So for example, if that YoPlate yogurt that you buy says 16 grams of sugar, just divide that by 4, and that gives you the number of teaspoons of added sugar that's in that yogurt. So 16 grams is 4. Can of Coca-Cola is 39 grams. Let's round it up to 40. That's 10 teaspoons in that can of Coca-Cola. So sugar. And then when it comes to fat, we want to look at those ingredients and make sure there's no animal fats, no lard, no butter. We want to make sure there's no hydrogenated oils in there. And then we go an extra step and we make sure there's no added olive oil, canola oil, safflower, walnut, flax, any oil. We are hard and fast against added oils, because it's the most empty, calorie-rich source of calories on the planet. And to put it in perspective for you and your listeners, Matt, 1 tablespoon of white sugar is 50 calories. 1 tablespoon of any oil, let's just pick olive oil, is 120 calories. So it's really 2.5 times the amount of empty calories as white sugar. And I say that because you look at olive oil, a nutritional facts panel, and you'll see, for the most part, there's no vitamins or minerals to speak of. There's no fiber, there's no water, there's no carbohydrates, there's no protein. There's very, very, very small amounts of omega-3 fatty acids. And this is just one big, huge calorie fat bomb, 100% fat. Yeah. So, so this is why I've come out with this food line to basically show people that, you know what, we can make a food product that has that is authentic to our rules that we're following, and is wholesome, and does not have copious amounts of salt, sugar, and fat, and always is made with whole grains, no added oils, no excessive sodium, and no refined sugars. And so we're super proud of what we're doing at PLANTSTRONG with our food line.
Yeah, I was going to add that, as I know we're really short on time here, but there's pizza crust and pancake mixes, and I think I saw popcorn on there, and
cereals, granolas, chili stews, broths, the list goes on.
Yeah, but I appreciate that you added those tidbits. You have a real remarkable way of bringing to the mind's eye what we're talking about here, because it's so easy to pick up that little tiny container of plant-based yogurt, and you're telling yourself, oh, it's plant-based, right? It's good for you, it's plant-based, and then you see like added sugar, and you now can compute 12 grams of added sugar. It's 3 teaspoons, but just imagine that, like, here's your coffee, right? Or here's whatever baked good, right? Like, a lot of us wouldn't put 3 teaspoons of sugar on there, because we'd hesitate and say that's too much sugar, but it's kind of insidious the way it's slipped in, and you will find that, as you just so eloquently put it. So I'll just
and you make a great point, Matt. And the thing is, it's ubiquitous. I mean,
right, and the same as oils.
This is it's a trick of all these manufacturers use, because they have food scientists and they know exactly how our taste buds work, how our minds work, and what they like. And so we really, what you have to do is you have to have the information and the knowledge. And once you do, you can override the system, because we've been designed, as Doug Lyle likes to say, it's this pleasure trap. And we seek these calorie rich, hyper palatable foods, right? But once you know that this is a trick, this is what they're trying to do to you, this is why you're drawn to them so much, you can basically, get reprogrammed and rewire yourself to whole food, plant-based. That's not, on that's not going to take your palate and all the receptors in your brain for a merry-go-round ride. Yeah. It feels really good when you can come back to whole plant-based foods that are super simple and super flavorful.
Yeah. Awesome. We are out of time, and I know both of us need to run to pick up kids from school, but the 7th pillar is move. And maybe you can have the last word and just tie it all together, because as we've been talking, the whole world is talking about the blue zones right now, because the Netflix documentary just came out. It'll be a little bit in the past, in the rearview mirror, that is, when folks are listening to this conversation. But so much of that environment, as we said, was set up to encourage social interaction, right? Community, purpose in your work, but just moving, right? Not exercise, not high heart rate, 45-minute intense gym exercises, but instead just moving your body. And I hope maybe you could just have a final word, bring it all together with us as we think about lifestyle to complement these amazing food, the amazing advice related to food that you just shared.
Yeah. So sitting has become the new smoking in this country. And there's a study that came out recently by the Kaiser Permanente Family Research, I think it was, Council. And it showed that your average adolescent today, they're behind a screen 7.5 hours a day, and they're moving 7 minutes a day.
I can't be right.
7.5 hours, 7 minutes. Oh, I don't doubt it for a second.
You can barely get from your bedroom to the kitchen and from the car to school in 7 minutes. So if that's truly the length, and maybe between classes, so maybe they're not counting that, but it's believable, but it's just so sad.
But the point is I think made, and it's effective. So I would tell everybody out there, I don't care. I mean, there's a lot of research showing that even 6 minutes of exercise a day, moving your body, does amazing things for your mind, for your happiness, for your immune system, to fight off, you mentioned it earlier, Matt, sarcopenia. We got to, do something to make sure our muscles aren't wasting away. But the effects of movement cannot be overestimated. And I've been doing a master swim program for 30 years with basically the same group of people. And we don't call it a swim practice. We call it an accountability session. So I would tell you, unlike people in Okinawa and, maybe Loma Linda and some other places that just move naturally, if you can't just move naturally during your work, or you can't figure out a way to commute to work on your bike or whatever, then find a group of people and do something you love, like pickleball. I'm also playing pickleball 5 mornings a week in a men's league right after swim practice. So find something you're passionate about and you love with people that you adore, and make it a habit, and you won't believe what it does for you.
Yeah, that's an amazing place to end. So Rip, thank you so much for being so generous with your time today. Thanks for all you do to spread our shared mission. And I hope you have a great drive to get at your kids, which I'm going to do. So we'll wrap up quick.
Hey, thanks, Matt. And hey, everybody, Plantapalooza rocks!